Start recording. Okay, that's going. Okay, so again, final exam next week. It will be open May 11th through May 13th. It'll be longer than the regular exams, but we'll have less than 100 questions. There will be one essay question, and those are available online. There is a practice exam available online. I will post the answers to that Friday. The questions for the final exam, most of those you will have seen before. They will have come from either the previous exams or from the chapter questions. Figure 3 to 5 questions from each chapter. And so try and go through the most important stuff. All right, so today the first thing I want to do is just kind of breeze through the, I want to share a screen on the impact solution PowerPoint. So let me see if I can do that. So that's there. Okay, does anybody see the ecology human impacts thing? You can give me a thumbs up if you can see that. That would be yes, okay. All right, so the ecology chapters have this kind of human impact, big problem kind of bent to them. And so they talk about this, and it's kind of depressing. And they talk about it, but there's hopeful things. So first of all, I want to say, you know, the biggest of these problems is global warming. Okay, it's a nice science problem because there's lots of evidence. And so in the media, in the mass media, you hear uncertainty, but there's really not scientific uncertainty. There's multiple lines of evidence pointing in the same direction. So that gives us high confidence that we're right, that greenhouse gases are causing a change in climate. Okay, this is kind of an ecological footprint type problem. Okay, where human impacts depend on population and resource use, and resource use is really the critical thing here. And so we have to, there is a solution to this problem, and it involves resource use. And the uncertainty that you hear in the mass media is often due to an industry that benefits from not implementing the solutions. And these are places like ExxonMobil, Koch Industries, these energy companies that are funding kind of science denial type activities. And so, you know, when we solve problems, we have to find and accept the best information and then look at options, research and develop options. You know, I have my slide here about, you know, where will Superman change his clothes now? There's no more phone booths. Using fossil fuels has been a great boon to humans. It's allowed us to industrialize the planet, to produce global industries, to increase transportation, to move goods, and to raise the standard of living. The side effect is that we're producing all this pollution. It's not surprising that this mass technology produces a problem. Okay, and just kind of, you know, to give you an example of this is that, you know, cell phones. Okay, everybody's got a phone in their pocket, in their hand, in their purse. Okay, I grew up, phones were attached to walls and buildings. It was expensive to call. Okay, long distance calls, you didn't make them because they were costing sometimes $5 to $10 per minute. It was ridiculous. And you know, if you went to downtown Chicago and got separated from your group, it was a disaster because you couldn't get back, you couldn't contact people. Now it's nothing. So, and these have been a great boon because now millions of people have phones. They can do different things. They can, at their fingertips, they have this really powerful tool. It doesn't require telephone lines. These things are, use very little electricity. It's really a great thing, but then there's new problems. Okay, we have to put cell phone towers everywhere. Our phones change and go obsolete in a year or two. We've got to dispose of these things. And then texting is a problem. And so until people figure this out, there's some problems, but it's way better. We're not going back. So climate change is a big problem, but we're not going back. We're not going to live in caves. We're not going back to live without modern conveniences. And so we're going to find solutions, and they're going to be better solutions. And they don't involve giving everything up, but they involve doing things in better ways. So there'll be some changes, and there'll be problems associated with those changes, but they'll be better. Okay. So for example, one of the things we need is to be able to do things using less energy. Okay. Improved energy efficiency. Okay. That will also likely mean using safer materials, reducing carbon dioxide, and this is going to be better for everybody. Okay, and there's lots of energy efficiency gains that we just have to apply these things. And some of these are spectacular improvements in energy efficiency, and one of them is lighting. Okay, we should be all replacing our incandescent light bulbs with LED light bulbs, and LED light bulbs cost more. Okay, they cost more. You know, incandescents cost, you know, like $1 a bulb. LED lights cost $5 to $10 per bulb. However, these use 1/10 the power. Okay, so they're unbelievably more efficient as far as producing light. They produce more natural light, and then the bulbs last 10 to 20 times longer at least. Okay, and so it's an amazing savings energy-wise. The college replaced all the classroom lights in the last year, and within 3 years, so it's this huge thing. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on classroom lighting, replacing all the existing bulbs, and we'll get all the money back in 5 years. Okay, and it's a huge energy savings where we're using way less energy than we were before, and the lighting is better. It's just better, but we had to do the money. We had to spend the money to save the money, and so there's lots of things like this. Refrigerators and freezers are more efficient. Heating systems are more efficient. Cars are more efficient. It's just, we have to do this, but once it's done, everybody will save money. Likewise, there's something going on that most people aren't aware of, but it's also one of these great kind of revolutions that's helping, and it's renewable energy. And so this is a really complicated slide, but I'll start over here. The cost of solar panels, the cost per watt, when they first came out, were in the 60s and 70s, was like $100 per watt. Now it's less than $1 per watt. Okay, and still dropping. Okay, so they're becoming very, very cheap. The number being installed has gone from almost none to yearly tens of thousands of megawatts. Okay, it's just amazing how much is being installed. So when we look at utility scale electric energy capacity additions and retirements, okay, here's the year, these are the retirements down below. We're retiring natural gas and coal, almost specifically, maybe a little bit of nuclear power, but these are the retirements, okay? And they're accelerating. We're closing more and more coal-fired energy plants, and we're replacing them with, it used to be natural gas, but now it's more likely wind and solar. Why? Well, the cost is coming down. And not only is the cost of the initial setup coming down, think about a solar panel. Once you put it up there, you don't do anything. It just sits and makes energy. Coal has to be continually mined. It has to be transported in rail cars. Coal has to be put into a big pile at the plant, and then you need conveyor belts and mechanical equipment to move the coal into the burners. You've got to clean out the burners because you get this coal ash. You need this giant tower spewing out things that's got to be cleaned. Coal is way more expensive. It's dirty, it's crappy. Nobody is going to save coal. Coal is going out. Okay, and so more and more we're seeing solar, we're seeing wind powered, and here coal, you can see coal, energy produced by coal is falling. Okay, and so this is just happening. It's just happening. There's nothing to stop it. Anybody, even the utilities, would rather have renewable energy. And so no matter what the oil companies and coal companies say, we are going to make these changes. Likewise, transportation. Here, these are two cars I own. The bottom one is a Honda Civic Hybrid. So it gets about 50 miles per gallon. It has electric brakes so that whenever I brake, it charges the battery. So it's really efficient. And the top one there is a Ford. Mine is a Ford Focus Electric. Okay, and so it has batteries that I charge at night. I just plug it into my wall outlet. I charge it at night, and then it runs on the batteries when I go for a drive during the day. Electric cars right now are a little more expensive, not much than gas-powered cars, but there's huge advantages. They perform better. They have way better acceleration. They're quiet. They respond quickly. They have low operating costs. My bottom car, I try not to drive. I try not to drive the hybrid because it costs more. I have to put gas in it. And you would think a car that gets 50 miles to the gallon would be cheap to operate, but it's not as cheap to operate as my car that I plug in the wall. That gets per kilowatt hour, it gets about 5 miles. And so to drive, 50 miles costs me 10 kilowatt hours. That's less than $1. That's amazing. So it has these low operating costs. And then there's no moving parts hardly. There's just an electric motor. There's no engine to heat up. There's no exhaust system that gets hot and cold. There's no radiator. There's no piston rings. There's nothing. It has a couple electric motors in it and a battery. So it has dramatically lower maintenance costs. And I don't have to go to the gas station. I just plug it in at night. And ultimately, because these cars don't have big engines, just batteries and a motor, they're going to be cheaper to manufacture. So eventually we're all going to have electric cars, maybe hybrid electric, maybe plug-in electric, maybe fuel cell electric, but it's all going to be electric. It's just a better technology. There's my next car in the corner there. That's the Tesla Cybertruck. It's brand new. It has way more torque, way more acceleration than the best Ford F-250. And it's going to be cheaper. Its first year, it's going to be cheaper. And it's got a stainless steel body. It's just a better technology. Okay, so in summary, human impacts are the result of human populations and human resource use patterns. The most pressing of these human impact crises is climate change, and that's caused by fossil fuel use. Science denial and fatalism impair our ability to respond to climate change, and the response we're going to need is energy efficiency and renewable energy improvements. And these will dramatically reduce the use of fossil fuels. And we're all going to benefit from this. Things will be cheaper for us. We'll get better performance. Okay, there's a Tesla in the driveway there. Teslas right now cost as much as some of the better luxury cars, but they're better. They're better cars. They have more storage, more room. They have more acceleration. They're just better. Okay, and then this house here looks pretty standard, but these are solar panels. These are solar shingles, and that produces the energy the house needs. Okay, you're gonna pay less on your electric bill. Okay, and so science can help us find solutions, help us find better alternatives. We just have to look there. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the share there. Anybody have any questions? Anybody heard this before? You hear a lot of misinformation. And so you hear things like, you know, the American way of life is non-negotiable. We have to have fossil fuels, and that's all just baloney. You know, solar panels right now is a great deal. Illinois has a law that allows you to get energy credits from the utility companies to if you install solar panels. It's a great deal. A bunch of people that work at Highland have got them. Highland put solar panels on. They'll pay for themselves in 8 years, and they'll reduce our CO2 production, which is really a great thing. But we didn't put them on because of climate change or CO2. We put them on, and they're just next to the science building. We put them on to save money. That's all. It's got nothing to do with climate. Nobody here except me cares about climate. They're all about saving money. And that's, you know, but it works. Okay. Anybody, any questions, any response? Anybody think this might be a good idea? Anybody? No. Well, be open-minded. You know, there's great opportunities there. Electric cars. Hey, I haven't been to the gas station. I did not go to the gas station in April or March. Okay, that's really cool. My electric bill is still less than $100 a month. I've got solar panels on my house, but it's we don't have a lot. We just got a couple, and so it's really efficient. Okay, well, let's review for the final. So I'll share some more screens with you here. Okay, so final exam. Let's do this. Can I do that? Will that do that? Okay, so final exam is 10% of your grade. I'm making it 100 points because, you know, you're doing it at home. There'll be some multiple choice. There won't be any fill in the blank. There'll be some true, false, and then one essay question. Okay, and so that's that. Again, the final exam will be available beginning sometime Monday morning, May 11th. It will close Wednesday night, May 13th. You have to take it sometime in there. You get one shot at it. Okay. Final exam preparation. Okay, it's too late to read the chapters if you haven't read the chapters, but you can go back and look at the chapter summaries. You should certainly look at the vocabulary words that were listed in the PowerPoints or on the cheat sheets. You should be familiar with those. All that stuff is stashed on Moodle, so you can go to Moodle and get it. You have, what do we have? Today's the 4th, so you have a whole week. That's 7 days to get yourself ready. I know you have other classes, but there's still time to study. You know, I think I've talked today, maybe I didn't talk about, you know, it's really important to study in frequent, short study sessions, 15 minutes at a crack, 20 minutes at a crack, then take a break and do that repeatedly. That's the best way to put stuff into your memory. It minimizes fatigue. It maximizes how much you will retain. Short, frequent study sessions. That's the way to go. Okay. So there were kind of 4 or 5 areas to our course. The first one was kind of background to biology. That was chapters 1 to 4, how science works, and then some chemistry and our introduction to cells. What is a cell? That's a really fundamental topic to biology. So kind of we've come back to how science works. Science's ideas that are then tested in experiments where evidence allows us to develop the better ideas. And so we evaluate ideas by evidence. We use a lot of chemistry in biology, and then we also talk about cells. So that's section 1. Okay, section 2 was more cells. We looked at the chemical reactions of cells, aerobic and anaerobic reactions, photosynthesis, and then we looked at how cells reproduce by mitosis and meiosis. So that was, again, 3 chapters, 6, 7, and 8, I believe. Okay. And then we were in the middle of inheritance when the whole world went to hell and we had the coronavirus came. So this was our section on inheritance. And so things kind of fell apart there around chapter 11. But we were talking about the mystery of inheritance, how traits are passed from parents to offspring. And so that was Mendel's work, where he identified alleles, talked about dominant and recessive alleles, that some alleles you showed all the time, that turned up in your physical appearance, but other alleles could be hidden. So dominant and recessive, genotypes and phenotypes. And then the mechanism for this was found in DNA, and DNA alleles are genes, and they can be transcribed and translated into proteins. And so we talked about DNA, genes, and then how those things worked. And then kind of after we came back, I talked a little bit about DNA technology. So that's recombinant DNA, DNA profiling, and the various projects there. Okay. Then again, online, we did the section on evolution. So we did chapters 13 and 17, talked about the basic mechanism, natural selection, which is populations change because the best organisms with the best genes leave them for the next generation. So over time, that's going to change things. And so then looking at living animals, we can perhaps identify common ancestors, shared features. So we talked about that. We talked about human ancestry. And then our last section was on evolution, or ecology, excuse me. Chapters 18 and 19, the study of interactions of organisms with one another. So I talked a little about organisms, ecology, and adaptation. Talked about biomes and climate change, and then human populations. Hopefully that's familiar. Okay, so there'll be a little extra on this last section on the final, because you haven't gotten a test on that. And so there'll be a little extra on that. The essay questions are on that. Let's see here, how much time? Yeah, like 5 minutes. So that the essay questions will be on there, but otherwise it'll be about equal, different sections. So then let me escape that and go to this view here. So then it just goes on and on and on. I just put up some of the most prominent slides. Okay. Again, I won't go through those today. I'll do that on Friday. The best way to deal with this is to spend a fair amount of time on it, to be active, to take notes, make review sheets, and quiz yourself. Look at your old exams, but do this in short, frequent sessions. Okay, go over the chapter summaries in a session. Go over exam 1 in a session. Go over exam 2 in a session, something like that. But short, frequent sessions. That's the way to study. Okay. Anybody have any comments? Rebecca, Hannah, Jennifer, anybody?
Can you post this later? Because my Wi-Fi wasn't working.
Okay, I am recording, so I will try and post this after I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
And I will go through the rest of those slides on Friday. So, and I'll say a little bit, but I'll try and post the rest. The other thing I wanted to do was just to say a little bit about the essay questions. So let me go there. I'll share that. Can I make that bigger? Okay. So there's 2 essay questions. You'll get one of these 2 questions. Okay. So there's the first one is on climate change. It says list and explain evidence that climate is changing. How strong is the evidence, and what, if any, uncertainty remains? What consequences do we face in a warming world? And what can we do about it? Okay, so here the crux of the question is evidence. And so I'm hoping that you can say more than just it's getting warmer in my hometown. I'm hoping you can say things like There's satellite photos and measurements of the North Pole for the last 50 years. The amount of ice is decreasing. Okay, it's decreased by at least half. The volume is decreased by maybe 2/3. North American glaciers, virtually all North American glaciers are retreating. The volume of ice is decreasing. These are really good measures because they're not so variable. It gets cold. It still gets cold in the winter and warm in the summer. Some days still seem colder than other. That weather is pretty variable. But when you start looking at, like the temperature of the ocean changing, that's not that variable, and that's a pretty strong piece of evidence. The Gulf of Mexico is getting warmer. That's a big body of water that holds way more heat than the atmosphere. It's hard to change that, and when we see that's changing, we know that climate is changing. And having these multiple lines of evidence, that's what scientists want. So we're really certain that overall things are getting warmer. There's very good certainty. Now, how much warmer? That's a big question. How much warmer will it get? That's where the uncertainty remains. But there's no question that it's getting warmer. There's no question that over the long haul, that's bad for us. Increasing sea levels are a huge problem, okay? Because the most valuable real estate, not just in the United States, but in Europe, in Japan, in China, in Asia, in India, the most valuable parts of the country are the coastlines. That's where the most people are. That's where your ports are. That's the most densely settled areas. And if sea level goes up by a foot, you lose lots of coastline. It's a big deal. So, we just have to use less fossil fuel. Okay, so the second of these questions, describe the growth of the human population on Earth. What factors promote human population growth? What factors limit human population growth? Explain what is likely to happen to the human population in the future. Okay, so over the past 500 years, and particularly in the past 100 years, human population has grown exponentially. We've gone from less than 500 million people to approximately 7.5, almost 8 billion. Okay, and most of that growth is in the last 100 years, and that's how exponential population growth works. We think this is populations all have the ability to grow exponentially. That's just part of biological reproduction. In particular for humans, we think that population growth due to the availability of food, agriculture, transportation, those have been really big things, and then improvements in health. Babies are much more likely to survive and reach adulthood because of medicine, because of safe drinking water, safe sewage disposal. Okay. What limits human population growth are density-dependent factors. Okay, that we're an equilibrium species where we can adjust our reproduction by when we get more and more crowded, and so that's what limits us. Things like food availability, space, competition, disease. Okay, so our population is likely to continue to grow, particularly in developing areas, but people are generally reducing fertility. Okay, my grandparents on both sides came from families of 11. I don't know anybody that has 11 kids now. It's much more likely people have between 1 and 5 kids, and probably more people are having down to the lower end. And that's just humans adjusting their fertility because they know their kids are going to survive. Okay. All right, so I'm nearing a half hour here. I'm going to stop sharing. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so I'm planning to post this. It'll be in this, no, I'll post it in the exam review box. There is another there's another Zoom session on Friday, same time as this one. Okay, and I will go over the rest of the slides. At that time, I'll talk a little bit about the last exam, and I'll try and answer any questions that people have. And Hannah has a question. Okay, so chapter quizzes, I think they're all available now. Okay, and so you can look at any of your old quizzes, and you can retake quizzes. But I'm not going to make answers available because I'm going to use the same questions. And so I won't make answers available, I'm sorry, but to use the same questions, I feel like I can't do that. However, you should be able to figure out what you've gotten wrong, because you know the scores, and you can, all that stuff is open. So if there's a question you're really stuck with, you can go to the book. And if there's questions you're really stuck with, you can email me, and I will give you enough information that you can determine which answer is correct. Okay, I won't just give you the answer, but I'll give you enough information that you can figure it out. I'm hoping that would be okay. And that's a good question. I'm sorry I'm answering it to everybody. Okay. Anybody else? So look at those old quizzes. That's a really good way to study. Look at your old exams, old quizzes. There probably won't be that many new questions. There will be questions from previous exams. I don't anticipate writing any new questions before the exam comes, so I'm going to use old questions. That's the way that goes. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Okay, so again, Friday, same time, I'll go over some more stuff. I will post the answers to the practice. There's a practice exam available in the exam review box. Okay, so I'm going to end the meeting unless someone says, no, don't end the meeting. Okay, no one's saying that. All right. Okay, thanks for showing up. Keep studying, don't worry. It's, just keep at it and things will go okay. All right.